of time determination. So this paragraph I've just read talks about everything, all contents and aspects of the world. We're going to focus now on the refutation just on one aspect of that, namely time determination. The master insight, recall, is that the empirical self is nothing other than an implicit locus of experience. As applied to the special case of time determination, the idea is that the temporal features of the empirical self are nothing but a series implicitly defined or determined by the temporal relations among events as experienced. Well, let's start. I want to start now with self-ascription, not necessarily temporal self-ascription, but what is self-ascription and how might that be understood? On Descartes' account, such ascriptions are made via an inward gaze at oneself. But more recently, a different picture of self-ascription of psychological states has been proposed. A lucid example is from Gareth Evans. So here's a quote from Evans. This is from, these are quotes, I'm sorry. First we got some quotes from the Refutation of Idealism. I'll get back to these. These will make more sense after I've talked a little bit about self-ascription more generally. So I'm going to get back to these quotes more materially. But first, Gareth Evans. In making a self-ascription of belief, I'm now quoting from Chapter 7 of Varieties of Reference. In making a self-ascription of belief, one's eyes are, so to speak, or occasionally literally, directed outward upon the world. If someone asks me, do you think there is going to be a third world war, I must attend in answering him to precisely the same outward phenomena as I would attend to if I were answering the question, will there be a third world war? I get myself in a position to answer the question whether I believe that P by putting into operation whatever procedure I have for answering the question whether P. Whenever you are in a position to assert that P, you are ipso facto in a position to assert I believe that P. Okay, that's the quote from Evans. And that's about self-ascription of belief. The method by which you can ascribe beliefs to yourself, tell yourself what you believe. Self-ascription of perceptual psychological states follows a similar model. And here's an example, a little visual example. If I ask you to tell me whether you are having a red or blue quale, a red or blue experience, perceptual phenomenal experience, you direct your eyes and attention at the apple. Modulo a few irrelevancies, you answer the question whether your psychological state is one of red quale possession or blue quale possession by answering the question, is the apple red or blue? With these few orienting remarks in hand, I want now to turn to self-ascription of temporal properties and to Kant's refutation of idealism, in part because of the initial reception of the first edition of the Critique, Kant was quite keen to distance himself from what he thought of as idealism. He felt that we had genuine knowledge of genuine objects, that we not only were not, but could not be ontologically isolated Cartesian egos. His refutation of idealism is an attempt to demonstrate what he thinks is the incoherence of an idea he finds in Descartes and Berkeley and others. The notion that the mind is a potentially self-contained and possibly self-knowing autonomous idea container. At the highest level of abstraction, Kant's argument here is that there is no self-knowledge without external object knowledge, or in Kant's idiom, outer experience. If this is correct, then the idealist position Kant is attacking is incoherent. It posits some form or other of self-knowledge while simultaneously denying, or at least allowing for the possibility of denying, the veracity of outer experience, which is the precondition of this self-knowledge. Kant recognizes that the strongest form of his argument is one that takes on that idealist position which claims the most minimal self-knowledge, and he plausibly identifies the most minimal self-knowledge as something like inner time determination. In knowing my own mind's thoughts, I surely know them as forming a temporal ordered sequence. In order for there to be any recognizable mind at all that I could cast an introspective net over, it would have to present at least some sort of sequence of mental states, something like mental state A, then mental state B, then mental state C. Of course, Kant is not assuming that the idealist must be able to order all mental states in such a sequence. One might forget whether yesterday one contemplated the Goldbach conjecture before or after one contemplated the Pythagorean theorem. The point is the weaker one, that on any idealist position, not all mental states could have undetermined temporality, especially those mental states composing the current train of consciousness. Given this, Kant's aim is to show that even this minimal time determination is possible only through outer experience. So now let's go back to these quotes. Oops. Here's the quote. Outer experience, this is a quote from Kant from the Refutation of Idealism, outer experience is really immediate. Only by means of it is possible consciousness's determination in time, i.e. inner experience. And a little bit later on, inner experience itself is only mediate and possible only through outer experience. Okay, we're in a position now to say something about what he might mean by this. I want to suggest that one way of thinking about what Kant is trying to get at, and that is, let's read Kant as suggesting that Evans' insight can be extended to the ascription of temporal predicates to one's own psychological states. We can imagine such a suggestion being phrased in a manner parallel to the earlier quote from Evans about beliefs about the Third World War. And I'm going to quote this isn't really Evans, this is what I'll call pseudo-Evans, but this is what Evans might have, Evans might have extended the same thought had he discussed temporal self-ascription in addition to just experiential states and belief states. In making a self-ascription of temporal relations among one's psychological states, one's eyes are, so to speak, or occasionally literally, directed outward upon the world. If someone asks me, did you experience the bulb flash blue before you experienced the bulb flash red, I must attend, in answering him, to precisely the same outward phenomena as I would attend to if I were answering the question, did the bulb flash blue before the bulb flashed red? I get myself in a position to answer the question whether I experienced B before I experienced R by putting into operation whatever procedure I have for answering the question whether B preceded R. Okay, now let's examine Rip's ascription of temporal predicates to his mental states. If we ask Rip whether he experienced the blue flash before or after he experienced the red flash, and we make it clear that we're asking him about his mental experiential states, what answer shall he make, and upon what basis shall he make it? Well, how would you answer it? So here I'm going to show you the red and blue flash again, and I'm going to ask you about the order of your experiential states afterwards. So here's the stimuli. Did you experience the blue flash before you experienced the red flash? Well, in answering questions about relations among external events, you focus your attention on the events. In answering questions about relations between your perceptual states, your attention is focused on the relations between the experienced events. That, anyway, is the suggestion. Now, you might think, well, gosh, when you ask me the question, I'm actually remembering, and remembering sounds like a mental state. Yeah, but what you're remembering is the external event. You're trying to remember whether there was blue on the screen before there was red on the screen. You're not trying to remember whether your mind was having a blue phenomenal qualia before it was having a red phenomenal qualia. Something like that. So either way, even if it's through memory, what you're attempting to access is the external events. And you're reusing that same procedure to then answer the question about your mental states. The opposing suggestion to the effect that you are making these assessments by trying to compare the temporal relations between changes in some introspected mental substance and changes in the world, I hope, should lack appeal. But it may have some appeal for one who thinks the brain is the subject. For this sort of Cartesian materialist will